Are you more afraid of believing something that is false or not believing something that is true? I raise the point because, as from my experience in the sciences and in scientific communication and even philosophical communication, I've kind of got the sense that most of us, we have a very, very strong fear of believing things that aren't true. So we have all kinds of systems in place to prevent that from happening and to protect ourselves from doing so. So we can be very, very intellectually cautious, which is a good thing. There's definitely a place for that, and that's important. But I think the interesting thing about that is we often don't think very much about the risk of not believing something that is true, because that's basically the same thing. Not believing something true isn't meaningfully different from believing something false. They cause the same sorts of problems in terms of not being able to act on truth, and both serve very much as obstacles to serving the truth. And I think this is important, and the reason why it's different is when it comes to not believing something true, the risk isn't we're not talking about things that are provable or easily admittable to verification, because that's the thing is there's a lot of true things that aren't proven, that aren't established by evidence, or necessarily easily done. It may not even be easy to do so. But the truth of the matter doesn't really depend on its provability or whether it can be verified. It's great when it can be, and a lot of things are verifiable, and that's great. And science has done a wonderful job in expanding what can be verified. But the important thing is a lot of things just fundamentally aren't verifiable. If we talk about, for instance, effects that happen across populations, how a certain policy is going to affect a nation, things like that. You don't know until you do it. When you change a law, you do not know what's going to happen until it happens. Things like that. So just all around, there's things that there's a lot of situations where we have to make decisions based on ignorance, but we still want to serve the truth, and figuring out ways to navigate uncertainty and search for the truth even when we can't verify it, or to get a sense of the truth in those situations. It's really difficult because it's not a situation where we can rely on a lot of the typical stuff like proof. We have to go in the dark. We have to be a bit exploratory. We have to expose ourselves to danger. But the reality is it's what we need to do to navigate this world is look at things and do our best to believe true things regardless of whether they're proven or not. Because if you think about in the past, it didn't matter whether Copernicus had a model of the solar system where the Earth goes around the sun. It didn't matter how eloquent Copernicus was in articulating that fact or putting that forward towards other people. That wasn't what made the Earth revolve around the sun. The Earth was always revolving around the sun, whether or not people believed it, whether or not the arguments for or against it were eloquent, things like that. So, and that's the thing, even if you had somebody who was totally unscientific, had no reason for believing that the Earth revolved around the sun, but just believed it, they were right. Even if they had no reason to do so. Even if they were contrary to the scientific consensus, which depending on the time period, that would have been the case. That's a difficult thing to deal with. The fact that the truth or reality doesn't really follow scientific consensus. Rather, scientific consensus is supposed to reflect that. But also, science isn't capable at any given time of addressing all truth. Especially when we get into fields like economics, law, sociology, psychology, spirituality. It's like science just isn't really equipped to handle a lot of these big questions. But that doesn't mean that we should be afraid of them or that we can't make good work. It's just that we have to rely on more than just science to make ground, to make headway on these kinds of issues, whether it be literature, poetry, prayer. There's a lot of tools that humanity has developed to handle that stuff, and it's not like we're perfect, and we're not, and these things aren't going to achieve a consensus about what the outcome is. literature, religion, things like that, they're not great at producing consensuses. But that doesn't mean that they're not trying to deal with very serious and significant issues, and that they're not making headway, at the very least. You compare religions, for instance, and it's like some are doing absolutely better than others in terms of finding truth. As well as authors, literati, things like that. These different methods of truth, even if they don't inspire the same kind of confidence that science can, or necessarily have the same sort of surety, it doesn't mean that you can't at least make progress. And that's the interesting thing is, if you really devote yourself to searching for the truth through means such as literature, through religion, or these other or other branches of the humanities, you do actually make progress. And that's the interesting thing, or you can anyway. You can make progress and improve your understanding of the world, even if you don't ever reach scientific surety on certain issues. And I think it's really necessary to make sure that we don't end up in a situation where we're disbelieving the truth. Because if we only rely on one epistemology, if we rely on only having one way of finding the truth, we're going to end up disbelieving a lot of true things. Whether it's science, whether it's religion, whether it's literature, it's like if we only use one frame of learning, there's a lot of truth that we just simply won't have access to, because the truth is diverse, it is complicated, it is multifaceted, and it can really only be approached from many different angles to really get a good sense of the thing. So this is just an encouragement to use that multifaceted approach, a multidisciplinary approach, and then likewise to don't let your fear of believing something false prevent you from believing things that you think are true just because you can't prove them. Because again, proof is not the standard of truth. Proof is a standard of verification. It isn't what actually determines things to be true or not. And it is just as serious a risk to disbelieve a true thing as it is to believe a false thing. Because if you're not believing the truth, even if it's not proven, even if like the truth is presented to you ineloquently, or ineffectively, the thing is it's still true, and you would benefit from believing it. So figuring out, of course, there's no way to get in these situations. There's no way to guarantee that any given thing is the truth, but you got to develop a sense of it and fight for it. Because like the inability to obtain perfection in this arena isn't the issue. It's like you got to fight for it. You got to try, even though it is difficult, and that's a hard thing. But yeah, remember that you need to believe the truth, not just disbelieve the false. So yeah, take care. See y'all on the flip side, and au revoir.